And we are live. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Beyond the 90. We've got a guest that I've known for a few years now. Never finally managed to get on the channel, but the advantage of the championship, managed to get him on the channel. Got Nathan from NWM, sorry. How are you doing, Nathan? You all right?
I am very well, thank you so much, Neil. Thanks for having me on, and I'm quite surprised that we actually ever got to do a live, considering how we've been playing for the last couple of years, and the fact that I never expected to see you guys in the championship. So thanks for having me on, and let's get a good preview going.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, do you know what? The worst thing is I expected us last year, and people call me hyperbolic, but yeah, that's another question in it for itself. And we're going to, as you know, park the season previously, trust the process of rebuild as we've got up at the moment. But just want to get in terms of Cardiff's season. Obviously, 2 seasons, second game in now. How have Cardiff looked this season?
It's quite hard to say. The thing that I'm going to start off initially is the optimism around the club has, you can say, been a lot better than it has in the previous years, in particular with new manager Errol Bullock coming in with fresh ideas, being allowed to bring in his own members of staff, etc. We've probably had one of the greatest transfer windows, even though we've had a transfer embargo, which is quite something as well. Bringing in the likes of, obviously, Josh Bowler, who's had a really good start to the season, the big elephant in the room in Aaron Ramsey, who has been absolutely superb since he has come back to the club for the 3rd time as well. Demetrius Gutas, who has also been playing really well as well in that centre-back role, just to name a few there as well, with some more expected to come in. Started off with a really good draw against Leeds as well. We have such a fantastic record against them, which you can say, in particular, them coming down from the Premier League, to be 2-0 up and to hold out for a draw, even though we did drop off in that second half, is something to be really impressed about. Then obviously coming into the QPR game, it was a massive disappointment in the first half with the individual errors which have been creeping in from the past couple of seasons that we always seem to get. Managed to work it back in well, sneaking the goal in the end. But it's been a very up and down start to the season, which is kind of expected with such a new squad, new manager trying to implement another new philosophy as well, which is just insane how many managers we've had in the last couple of years. But yeah, it's really just trusting the process. And as you guys probably imagine with Enzo Maresca coming down from the Premier League, having a massive rebuild around your squad, replacing squad players, including, especially if he goes like your Timothy Castanhas, also your Tielemans going out the door as well, bringing in Mavididi, Dewsbury Hall coming in really well. It's just really coming in and seeing, in particular, matches that you can win as well, especially Leicester. Such a hard game this weekend, but trust in the process and let it build properly.
That's pretty much where we are at the moment. So you're right in terms of, again, A, trust in the process, but B, is it a lot of, so for example, we're playing a completely different formation. We'll get onto it a little bit later about the specific formation and how we're going to set up against you. But in terms of the way that Bullet is setting up, is it similar? Because you're changing the philosophy, but it seems to be, again, a standard formation. Is there many players that have changed that or come in and really shone as part of that?
Main one that I've got to say, in particular from the last couple of seasons, is Ryan Wintle coming into that midfield role as well. We've obviously seen him in other squads. So, for example, Steve Morrison's, Mick McCarthy's as well. God, that was a grim time we won't mention. Mark Hudson as well really went on fire under Sabri Ramucci, but it just seems like a really composed and different player under Errol Bullock. And something that we haven't had, which is creativity in midfield over the last couple of seasons, seems to have been fixed in either this 4-3-3, which he does love, or the 4-2-3-1. So Rolls, even though he's going to be out injured at the moment, Rolls, Ramsey, and also Ryan Wintle. Last couple of seasons, in particular last year, second lowest goal scorers in the championship, just did not create the chances at all. And yeah, that is the exact example of the setup right there. So Abu Adams, who was out all season with a season-long injury last year after signing with the club. Poor bloke has come in like a house on fire, back from injury, which has been fantastic. And yeah, that's pretty much how we're playing. Bowler, Ramsey, and Grant across the line with Ike Ogbo, who's actually, I believe he has got 3 goals in 3 games, which is very, very good as well for this start of the season. He's also scored in the Cup too, which is another thing that we've been missing out from in the last few seasons, that scorer who can get those goals consistently in that poacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I was going to mention about Ugbo as well. Obviously, in the Premier, I didn't know he had 3 and 3, but he had 2 and 2 in terms of the championship as well. How's he looked so far? Because again, when you scored 2-2, especially early days, I think there's only been Che Adams himself, Ugbo, and I think it might have been another player. I can't remember. Maybe Alexander Armstrong, I think is another one. Have been the only players that have scored 2 goals in 2 games. So that even already, how do you think that plays into well, what have you made of him? And again, it's obviously put him on the map in terms of from a championship perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially bringing him in from Troyes in the, I believe it was the French second tier as well. Lots of people have reservations whether he's going to be the first choice or whether he's going to come behind the likes of Carlon Grant or Yaku Mete. But Errol Bullett's been persistent with him and starting with him in every single game so far. He's been getting in and around the box, passing it around, really developing and getting those chances created. But he's also been poaching, in particular, crosses coming in from your likes of your NGs and also your Callum O'Dowders and finishing off chances. Like Aaron Ramsey had a beautiful assist played into him in that Leeds game, for example, and then poached in the last game as well. So he's been impressive, and he's going to, for me, with the way he's going at the moment, I imagine he's going to end up being a 10 to 12 goal a season striker. But you will need that extra support around him. In particular, I thought Colin Grant's performance was extremely disappointing against QPR the other day. And in fact, if he keeps playing like the way he was, I will happily drive him back to the Hawthorns on the way back from the King Power.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's the fact you've got one player and striker again the scoring goals. That's all that matters at the moment. I think in terms of Ugbo, what kind of player is he? Again, I've not managed to watch either of your games, but from it, what kind of centre forward is he?
So I'd probably describe him as a bit of a poacher. So where he's lingering around the box, clearing up the misplaced shots, especially the rebounds from the keeper, which we have seen a lot, tends to lurk around there. Can also create chances along to the wings. So, for example, your Colin Grants and also your Josh Bowlers when you're getting in there as well. He's very reasonably good on the ball as well, and also has a bit of pace and dribbling about him. So really, he's a bit of an all-rounder, but is that main type of striker or he is a poacher? Fair
enough. And again, that's something that we've got to be aware of, because we'll get into Leicester a little bit later, but if you get in behind us, especially with Vestergaard at the back, who turns like a cruise ship, he can be one-on-one. It can be quite easy, but he's won the play. Well, we'll get into it a little bit. So just even looking at that previous game against QPR, you had them. Are you just saying it was an individual errors that lost you the game? Because the fact is, you dominated. You were on top for the majority of the game. You had most of the possession. So was it just individual errors that lost you the game?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first goal was Callum O'Dowd made a bit of a mistake. It was either a mistake or a bit of miscommunication between himself and Ibu Adams, which allowed Armstrong to just get forward and obviously pass through the box into the net. And then the second one, Armstrong yet again, absolutely fantastic performance by him from a QPR perspective, you could say. Demetrius Gutas, one-on-one, folds like a deck chair, straight through, pass across goal, 2-0 up. So both were individual errors, very costly by it last season, but that is the one thing that we've been praying that Errol Bullitt in the end does get a hold of, because that's what seems to let us down in a lot of these games. Not so much poor team performances, but these isolated incidents where, say, for example, O'Dowda makes a mistake, or a lot last season, in the season before, Curtis Nelson, when he made a mistake, and certain other players around there as well. But yeah, it's just a lack of consistency, really.
Yeah, I've been there and I've seen that as well. And it's the individual errors. And the thing is, you can get away with them more in the Championship, but it's still, if you make a mistake, you will get punished in English football in general. We were just lucky at times that we had when Coventry in our first game that they couldn't hit anything, because we could have been 3-0 down by the time we scored our first goal. We were quite lucky. In the Premier League, would have punished a lot more. But just coming into that, in terms of the how's it feeling at the Millennium Stadium as well? What's the crowd like? Because obviously last season, I remember seeing a lot of your tweets and stuff going, it was just awful. But how is it now? Kind of a new refresh, new manager, obviously new players as well.
It's difficult to say. I would say that there's been a lot more optimism, especially around the club, than there has been within the last 5 years. In particular, the protests against the owner have died down a little bit, you can say, but there is still the boycotts, the lesser attendance that we've seen in the last 10 years as well. But the fans are starting to come back. I think it was our highest attendance, aside from a derby game, that we've actually had for a league match in about 2-3 seasons now, which is very promising that it's started to build back up around the 22,000s, which is okay for the Championship, but still needs to be higher, especially in Cardiff City terms. But what we need to focus on, because sadly the players were booed off at both halves last season, which against QPR, which did happen a lot last season and the season before, is that really we need to back the players more. And if something goes wrong, then really get in and support the players, to be honest. But mood around there is good at the moment. But if we do spiral down a bit and get a number of losses on the board like we did last season, then there's a chance that the toxicity might return. But I think it'll be less much this season, considering what's happened during the summer.
Fair enough. I mean, what happens as well, especially when you have a negative season like we did last season, you find that there's certain fan bases that can't let go of what happened, and there's certain that it was stuck in the way it was. And even with the old way you used to play, even though you've got a new manager, new formation, new tactics as well. And just to talk about again a good uplift as well. Obviously, Aaron Ramsey coming back to the club, must be absolutely thrilled with that. But how's he been so far? Because his career, he's kind of fizzled out again. He went to Nice as well with our Kasper Schmeichel as well, and now he's come to you. But how's he been? So he came back.
It's just been absolutely phenomenal the way that he's come back for a third time as well, because in particular in football, you don't often get a player that returns to a club 3 times. Started off his career here. He actually played in an FA Cup final for us as well when he was 18, replacing late great Peter Whittingham. I can't believe I've ever said that. Like Aaron Ramsey, Peter Whittingham, both in the same team in an FA Cup final is just completely obscene. Then comes back for, in my opinion, our greatest Championship side, where we had the likes of Craig Bellamy, Aaron Ramsey, Michael Chopra, Jay Bothroyd, Mark Hudson, just to name a few. In my opinion, the greatest squad that never got promoted up to the Premier League. He fitted in so well there, just couldn't get it over the line after he bottled it against Reading. And then comes back for a third time after all his pedigree with the trophies he's won at Arsenal, the Scudetto, which he won at Juventus, doing extremely well for Nice in France, playing a number of games and really being excellent in that midfield. But there was one thing he wanted in the end, and that was to come home back to Cardiff, settle in his family, get his kids in the youth team, and really just be back at home. But the way he started as well, really bedded in with the fans as well. He's absolutely loving every second of it. And his performances on the pitch show that as well. Got his first assist against Leeds, creating loads in midfield as well. And fair play to our old Bullet, which is one thing that we really needed to do. And that is where controlling his fitness well. He's played about 65, 70 minutes a game, but whenever he seems completely comfortable.
That's good to hear. I mean, when you have a player like that comes back, were you surprised when the links happen? You're like, is it going to happen? And then when it actually happened, it probably would have been like complete elation. I mean, we've had similar things in the past where we've had certain players, and it's just a mega, he's not coming back. And then when he does, you almost can't believe it. It's like Christmas Day all over again.
Oh, that's how it felt. It was just elation when he came back to the club, to be honest. But I think I had a high suspicion that I knew this was going to happen, just because if you look at his Instagram stories and everything for the last couple of years, during the summer, he has always been in Wales, in Cardiff. He's still got his house here, and we've always known that he wants to come back to the club one last time for one last run as well, in a permanent basis as well. And then ultimately, in the end, he does come back to the club, but there was a few fans were being a bit hesitant, obviously, with the Gareth Bale situation that did happen towards the end of last season, and how that just folded like a deck chair within a day, where he was at our training ground about to sign and then ends up out the front doing an announcement video for LAFC on the training ground. We won't go anywhere near there, but this time it finally happens. Lots of fan relief, especially after probably one of the worst 12 months in years for the club as well. The fans needed something to cheer about, and ultimately we did end up getting it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, just enjoy it, as you said. And the fact that he's come back, the fact that he's again a local lad, make the most of it. And I think in general, I want to get it onto, I think you've covered pretty much all of my questions. A couple of things I was talking about. So Leicester City set up with a 3-2-4-1. kind of like Pep style with like a double pivot in midfield with the right back coming in. I've tried to find a formation and how to do it, but I've got to go and set it up individually, manually, and every other formation is a 4-3-3. But in terms of that, it looks like we're going to have the majority of the ball, especially at home. How do you think the Bullet's going to come at that? Because just looking from your previous game again, you had the majority of the possession. So how do you think you'll change tactics according to like coming up against Leicester?
It depends which way he approaches it, especially with the way that we did against Leeds. So they pretty much dominated about 70 to 75% of the possession, especially in the first half as well, where they did not generate the chances. And the way that we really did get into them was in our own half, playing the ball a little bit, and then your Josh Bowlers and also your Colin Grants, even with the overlap from Perry NG and also Callum O'Dowda as well, really getting them into space and overlapping on the counter to get behind that defensive line, which caused us to get the balls in the box. Aaron Ramsey, if he needed to come back outside, then we could play it to him or Joe Rolls or Ryan Winsell, who could then push it across to either Grant or Bowler on the outside with even EK Ogbo in the middle poaching. So that's really our Bullets' way of doing it, especially with a team with a lot more quality than Cardiff City, like you guys, and also Leeds, to really break them down in a way that we couldn't do it against QPR, where we dominated the majority of the ball, generated loads of chances, got about 15 corners, but unfortunately just couldn't hit a barn door. So it's interesting because you could adapt it a little bit, but I did find we were, especially in and around the midfield, we were way too slow and a bit nervous to go forward. But ultimately, that's where he needs to change it.
Fair enough. No worries. Again, I'm just trying to get in here as well. And in the meantime, just kind of build a formation. It's not ideal, but we play again quite a high line in terms of that. So Manson will be probably quite far out of his goal, almost at times pushing into like the back four. And they got two players in midfield, and then you basically got two number 8s and two wingers, where it looks like we're going to push. But in general, from our perspective, is there any players that we should look out for from your side, like that would be a real worry in your opinion?
Really, the one that I'm extremely nervous about, and I think that's just the way that you guys have started the season, is Mavididi. I mean, his performance against Coventry, and in particular last time around, where he did get that end goal against Huddersfield, he's just been phenomenal since he's come into you guys. Absolutely petrified of him, to be honest. I think Kelechi Iheanacho, I think he's just a cheat code in the Championship. If he does end up playing, that's another player I'm worried about, especially breaking down the likes of McGuinness and Gutas, in particular Gutas, who did make that massive mistake towards the end of the last game as well. Harry Winks is another one that scares the life out of me. The fact you signed him in the Championship is just obscene as well. Dewsbury Hall, another player who's started off the season like a house on fire. He's going to really dominate, I think, our midfield as well, generating the chances out to the likes of Mavididi and moving forward as well. I also think defensively, you guys are solid too. Wout Weiss, if we can break him down as well, and like Connor Cody, then I will be happy, especially if you guys press with a high line, just so we can create on the overlap and get the likes of Bowler and Grant forward and through.
Yeah, and that's something that, again, I'll get all the formations. In general, we're probably going to have Cody out because Cody is missing from this. It's probably going to be Vestergaard that's starting. I think Hermansen probably will be back. Iheanacho again and Vardy. Not sure who's going to play in terms of that. And then again, it'll be the way that you could get us would probably be down this right-hand side. Is probably where it's going to be in terms of that as well. We've got a new defender, new midfield number 8 that's coming in, Kasedi. He's probably going to play, and
he looks brilliant. To be fair.
Yeah, I can't. Some of the players we've got in, I've been surprised at pretty much every one of them. Again, Nathan. I grew up watching Leicester City football back in 2008. Just rubbish, just crap. Rubbish football. And thinking going to the Championship, I was expecting us to go and get some players I'd never heard of. Maybe I'd get a few academy graduates. With our signings have looked spectacular this window, and arguably would have kept us in the Premier League probably last season. But that's something else as well. But in terms as well, the last time you came to our ground, can you remember when that was? Because I've got it down here. If you can remember.
I can indeed. I believe it was just after Christmas back in 2019 in the Premier League, and there was a certain Spanish midfielder who is currently at Real Oviedo, known as Victor Camarasa, who decided in about the 88th, 89th minute, I think it was around then, just outside the box, played in from Harry Arter, bang into top bins past Kasper Schmeichel to win it 1-0.
Yeah, that one. I don't know if you know, we just come from winning against Chelsea and from Man City, and we're feeling on top of the world coming into that game. And then typical Leicester City fashion. So that one was the last time, and then obviously the game before that as well with the I don't know what your memories were. You at the ground for the where we had our first game back since the helicopter crash?
Yes, I was at the game then as well. All I'll say is that is quite possibly your group of fans that day were the best fans I've seen ever at the Cardiff City Stadium. Just with the atmosphere, all the flags and banners, your tributes were just absolutely phenomenal. The way that obviously our club ended up doing it as well. You guys did end up winning the game as well. Remind me who did get the goal in the end?
Damari Gray.
Damari Gray, of course it was.
I think it was.
Yeah, it was a 1-0 victory. Yeah, you guys absolutely played us off the park that day. But when we did, going back to the other one, still can't believe we did end up getting that victory, considering how much of a fine form you were in as well. And then that was a little blip for you guys, went on to push on even harder.
Yeah, that was season under Clawpole was just, I think, a bit of a strange one because I think you've had it where you've had a manager that's so defensively minded, and it's just we had three. I think we had three CDMs. Oh yeah, we had Clawpole then that way. Before we got Brendan Rodgers, I think we had Clawpole then as well. But yeah, that's pretty much everything in terms of the match. How do you see it going in terms of the game coming up? I know can't predict anything, but at the same time, I remember the times back in the Championship when I used to watch it. Somebody could be top half of the Premier League, top half of the Championship, and then 3 months later they could be towards the relegation zone. It changes so much.
Absolutely, as you just said, that's the beauty of the Championship. I mean, anyone can beat anyone every week. You guys are on stellar form at the moment, so to be honest, I can't see us coming out of there with a victory. However, I do think that with the changes and what Errol Bullett's seen of the sides, especially against a team that's promotion favourites and a team that's pretty much relegation and doomed to get into League One next season in QPR.
You think?
I think so, especially with the way that they did play against us as well. Really capitalising on mistakes, and that's all they really offered, considering the amount of chances that we had and what they were conspired to be honest. But fair play to Ainsworth for getting the victory over us. But I think in recent fixtures, you could say at the King Power, where we have scored that worldie. In particular, one I got to mention was in the playoff semi-final, where Peter Whittingham did score that screamer free kick, hitting the post straight in the net. Obviously, where we did get to the final, ultimately didn't go up. So I have a feeling we're going to score a worldie in this one. I have a feeling you guys will end up coming out with the 3 points, but I'm going to be a little bit optimistic, which is something that hasn't happened at the club for a while. And I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Fair enough. But yeah, I just have something I forgot to mention. Again, I've probably got to plug Nathan's chat is in Nathan's channel is in the chat. I'll be meeting him before the game as well. So make sure you go and subscribe, like all that good stuff to his channel. Again, I need to start doing that. I've literally put on my notes, plug immediately, and I still forgot to do it. But yeah, make sure you go check out Nathan's channel. He'll have his he'll vlog out as well. But anything else you want to promote as well, I'll leave your Twitter and your YouTube down below. Anything else you want to plug as well, Nathan?
I think you pretty much nailed it on the head, and thanks for having me on. And, yeah, what an amazing stream it is, and can't wait for Saturday.
Should be good fun. I look forward to you, Nathan, and like, subscribe, all that good stuff, everybody. We'll see you in the next video. So goodbye.